Salespeople, I know without a doubt that over the next 12 months you would love to have at least a 10% increase in your sales revenue. And sales managers, I know that you'd love to have for your salespeople that 10 to 20% increase across the board over the next 12 months. And today what I'd like to do is share with you one extremely powerful suggestion and communication tip that can help you get to that 10% mark. And that tip today is my top secret sales question. That's right, the top secret sales question. And I'll tell you what, this is very difficult because the top secret sales question is only 4 words. That's right, 4 words. And the statement or question is, tell me about you. Tell me about you. Only 4 words. And you know what, it's not so much the statement itself, but it's the psychology behind it. In many cases, it's how we phrase it or language it to a client that makes a difference. I know many of you have been to the sales training where they're taught open-ended question, close-ended, let's ask a question that requires discussion, and all those kind of things. And all those things are good. But the fact of the matter is when you're in the beginning of a sales cycle with a new client, somewhere within that first 1 to 3 minutes time of that communication, you have to ask the secret question, and that is, tell me about you. Now, you know what? It doesn't matter if you're on the phone or in person. You always got to do it the same way. But here's the biggest reason that we ask the question specifically, tell me about you, is that we're not prompting the client. We don't want the client to be prompted, so don't say something like, tell me about your business, or tell me about your company, or tell me about your product, or tell me about you personally. We want that question in a neutral state. The reason is because the response or various responses to that question is going to do a couple things for us. Number one, it's going to immediately identify the personality style of your client. And that's huge, because if you don't know the style of your client and their personality, you're going to pitch exactly how you would pitch to yourself. And see, what you do there is you eliminate a part of that marketplace out there that's not like you. And therefore, we don't get intimate with those other people. And in many cases, guess what? Our competitors will make that sale. So it's huge. The other thing is about the question, tell me about you, is that because you're asking the question and you're not prompting, you're going to get a very authentic response from the client. And in many cases, because you're not like all the other salespeople out there in the world, they're going to basically blast through some of that trust and rapport building that you might have been doing. And if you are really listening to them, well, I'll tell you what, you're going to start getting into those intimate zones with those clients. Again, rapport building and then intimacy. And then in many cases, they're going to give you buying clues. And in some cases, they're going to tell you exactly how to close them. Both these situations, knowing their personality and getting those buying hands, are going to move you closer to what? Closing the deal. Exactly. So let me give you just kind of a heads up as what we've learned at public speaking school, because it's important on not only the 4 words but also how you say it. And I was taught many, many years ago that one of the best ways to improve my pitch, my pace, and my articulation is to do what I call sousing your audience. And we were taught many years ago in National Speakers Association that when you speak, you want to speak as if you were reading from a Dr. Seuss book to a school full of children or a classroom full of children, and that's how you speak to an audience. Guess what? Your client, face-to-face, across the desk, that's an audience. Guess what? That client on the phone, I mean, you could be in Fort Worth, Texas, speaking to a business person all the way at the Empire State Building in New York City. That's your audience. So sometimes you got to learn some of these public speaking skills. So what's interesting about this is I just want to give you a couple hints about how to soothe that client. Speak slowly, speak methodically, make sure to make eye contact with them, and if you're on the phone, where do you make eye contact with? The mirror that's in your office. So because the eyes are the windows to our souls, our feelings, all that stuff can get actually transferred through the phone. So I want those mirrors in your cubicles if you actually don't get face-to-face with the client. So this is exactly how I do it. I use my body language. I kind of get prepared. I move a little bit closer to them so that they know that I'm intently listening to them and communicating to them. And then what I would do in some cases is actually take my hand and put it right up here on my chin, and I'd look at him and I'd say, Mr. Client, do me a favor. If you would, please tell me about you. Then be quiet. Listen. Listen for buying clues. Listen for clues about their personality style. And then, if you understand those things, you know how to move and basically navigate your presentation towards that client. So let me give you hints on the personality styles. There are 4 personality styles that we deal with, and these are all pretty much the same. You might have heard them a different way. But we have a director, socializer, relator, and thinker. Director, socializer, relator, thinker. So this is how the question goes. If you ask the question of a director, Mr. Director, do me a favor and tell me about you. Be quiet. Listen for the response. In most cases, the director is going to respond with some sort of ego statement. I have this business, my company revenues were this, I've accomplished this, I have the biggest bass up on the wall, I have the nicest airplane, whatever it might be. That's the director's response. When you know that, you know how to navigate that presentation to them to completely mold it around them. The socializer. Mr. Socializer, if you would, do me a favor and tell me about you. Mr. or Mrs. or Miss Socializer is automatically going to go to family or sphere of influence or people that they know, or they're going to go to a statement about their feelings. So we know who that is. Our third person on our list is the relator. You ask the question of the relator. Tell me about you if you would. The relator, fear. Actually, they go silent. They start pondering your question. They might even sweat. The reason is they don't want any spotlight on themselves. So in many cases, the relator will turn that question and throw it back at you and say something like, you know, I really don't want to talk about me. Tell me more about you. So they'll throw it right back at you. And then last but not least, our thinker analytical personality styles. They'll put their hand to their chin and start thinking as well. And then after a brief few moments of silence, in many cases, they'll turn around and say, you know, that's kind of an interesting question. Why are you asking that question? And then how do you respond? Heck, you tell them. So I want to know your personality style so I can help better deliver communication to you and communicate with you better. You know, truth's a powerful ally in your back pocket. So when you know these things, you can start molding that presentation. And as we go further in the months here on all the video training that we're doing, we're going to get specifics into really telling you about, you know, how you close that director, or taking the thinker and giving them the worst case scenario to get them to the point where they can make a decision. So we're going to share all these powerful things with you. And last but not least, I want you to know this. As it relates to that question and the method that I've given you today, it's not always 100%, but by golly, it's probably 90% accurate, and it will help you to close more of that business.